Hi, my name is Piotr.kalbarczyk and I'm happy to present you my graduation project, Kusfeld, Gardens in the Sea. Enjoy watching.
Hel Peninsula, a 34-kilometer-long narrow strip of land at the Polish coastline, an artistry of nature that until the 18th century was only an archipelago of islands. Kuźnica is a special place in this microcosm. It is the lowest located fishermen's settlement, a touristic paradise of annually longer and longer summer season, all thanks to the quickly heating up weather. Yet the very same reasons that attract so many people come here might soon threaten the integrity of the peninsula. Kusfeld, cause that's its original Kashubian name meaning kissing point, embodies all the contradictions of the discussion about the global warming. From the side of the sea, the dunes are slowly being absorbed by the power of the Baltic Sea. From the side of the Puck Bay, anticipated flooding are soon going to threaten most parts of the village. At the same time, no one really seems to recognize disastrous consequences of massive tourism and understand that places like Kusfeld might be extinct in the course of upcoming decades.
Will the sea and the bay eventually kiss, as the name poetically suggests? Will Kusfeld become the very first Polish settlement that will drown when the sea level rises? How its story can challenge humankind's relationship with nature and revise disaster prevention in areas prone to climate changes? In order to protect the settlement from anticipated floodings, local government wanted to build a 2.5-meter high wall. But further developments on this topic were stopped by a locally signed petition. Residents were afraid that blocking the view towards the Puck Bay will stop guests from coming. Tackling water safety is unthinkable without an integrated approach in which different interests are being taken into account. The problems arise only when spatial quality is seen as an optional luxury. If we focus exclusively on safety, then we will lose the battle. It will only work if we have safety and quality created by means of an inclusive, design-driven process. And this made me think how this superstructure meta-planning of a protective wall can be translated to a smaller scale. How to create a productive balance between territories local and geopolitical, between natural and man-made.
The first step was to take the wall and organize it in a different way. My proposal is called the Noah's Ark 2.0 master plan. The historical spatial arrangement of Kusfeld was based on the natural height and connective lines in the landscape, a place without roads, with transportation routes formed in the transversal lower parts of land that made it possible to drag boats between the open sea and the waters of the Puck Bay. At the time when the core part of the village was being formed, the buildings were mostly situated on a few higher spots, which were not attacked by storm waves. As a consequence of such grouping of the houses, Located between the passes periodically broken by water, a unique island-like fisherman's settlement has been created. Later this was traversed by a road and a railway line, and an artificial harbour was added. The historical spatial arrangement of the rural complex was acknowledged as unique and listed on the Register of Heritage Sites. The place is the architecture, as the saying goes. Looking at the origins of Kusfeld's urban tissue and translating it into a future-proof master plan, the rhythm was found in the form of the original fishing enclaves. New Kusfeld is also a place without roads and comes into being as an archipelago of gardens in the sea. Based on the urban setup of the village, it foresees 24 island-like enclaves, small grouping of 5 to 10 houses, natural human scale, just like in blue zones, places where people can prosper and live longer. The urban tissue reacts to the spatial changes of the place, making former street web into system of canals that can be enclosed in case of stormy weather. This is the redefinition of architecture for the upcoming circumstances. Community affected by rising sea level, climate changes, and new socio-economical models. And yet it is a final vision that needs a blueprint. With the Noah's Ark 2.0 master plan as a trigger and navigation instrument, it all starts with the prototype, architectural focus of the project. The chosen place is the most vulnerable part of Kusfeld. The cluster of 8 houses is located only 1.2 meters above the current sea level. It is a pilot project, the first of 24 gardens in the sea. It is a celebration of awareness and inspiration for local community to act. In current situation, fences located on the plot boundaries are the symbol of privately owned land. Having very different architectural expression, they divide the neighbors, rather than giving a feeling of community that is so present in Kusfeld. A new proposal. The cluster screen is a 3-meter high barrier providing security even with the sea level rising up to several meters. The living premises would move to the first floor of the housing units, with possible remodeling of the houses. Opening up the attics would make the terrace a natural extension of the living space. The construction of the wall itself is a most common method used in reinforcing embankments, allowing for usage of recycled elements. 7 meters long Larsen sheet piles are brought to the location by standard lorry, fed by a crane to the specialized pressing machine that sits on the wall itself and precisely presses it 4 meters deep into the ground. This allows to both avoid the leakages caused by groundwater, and with a thickness of 30 millimeters, it is a safe barrier from harsh waters of the sea for at least 150 years. The fenced cluster with an inner courtyard becomes an entity by adding a series of additional chambers. The wood frame structure, made of thermally treated beams and columns, support the stability of the deep wall. Whereas most of the new added spaces serve the self-sufficiency of the cluster, others can be easily transformed into guest houses. Altogether, they enclose the communal residential space with its daily rituals, making inhabitants the future monks of Kusfeld. A day is rising, making its way through the roof lights of the communal kitchen. It is a place for daily routines with its centrally located wood stove kitchen that also serves as a round table. Outside, Hortus conclusus, enclosed garden, where main production of vegetables and fruit within the cluster takes place. Productive patio and series of greenhouses provide for the families. All is surrounded by a wooden porch, A raised platform that serves for circulation but also assures constant ventilation of the elements. The thermally treated timber framework is placed on screw piles with the locally sourced pine wood decking. It also works as a connecting element of the whole ensemble and a stage for social activities, with the steps serving as an amphitheater around the green courtyard and the spacious decked walkways. The structure is an inviting place to sit, meet, and reflect. The day passes by. Some inhabitants are occupied by daily rituals of repairing boats in the workshop space. Younger citizens are hanging out together under the pergola in the garden or studying in the library. The outside of the new added buildings is defined by its distinct character of charred wood cladding. This technique is inspired by the traditional craft used in fishing villages. It makes the weatherboards immune to termites, fungi, and resistant to rot. Contrasting with the white facades of existing houses, the deep black surfaces lend the chambers an imposing aura of intrigue and depth, but also improve significantly the lifespan of wood. The evening brings moments of relaxation. Some seek their mindfulness in the sauna. As the sun sets into the horizon, the inhabitants meet in the refectory, main collective space with a long table that can accommodate the whole community. Inspired by the folklore, the Kashubian traditions are present all around. Local motif occurs in the personalization of the wooden shutters, providing privacy and sun protection. Dark wood structure is visible also inside, referring to the old Prussian timber frame technique of building. The pace is different in here. It surpasses the hectic of the contemporary world in its ordinariness and sanity. Sound of the sea instead of traffic noise. Birds, insects, trees awakened by a sudden breeze, a small paradise in the harsh context. A new way of life in coherence with the water. Thus, how could these qualities of a small enclave be translated into elements of the urban scale? How do the gardens of the sea correspond to each other? The village is designed as a chain of connected islands. Even though each of them is unique and independent, in the context of the archipelago they are connected through a network of routes. The pathways that join them create a moment for discovery, barter of food, and exchange of news with the neighbors. Closable gates create a system of bridges, securing a safe network of the individual gardens. The autonomy of the village is secured first and foremost by its location in the sea. Aquaculture becomes the main source of the food production. Mollusks, fish, crustaceans, algae, seaweed, and other aquatic plants. Scaffolding-like structures located on peripheries of Kusfeld have two-folded purpose. They work as infrastructure for placing crates and cages needed for all kinds of mollusks farming, clams, mussels, scallops, oysters, and abalones. They stimulate the growth of seaweed, green, red, and brown algae, that can be used for both gastronomical but also pharmaceutical purposes, but they also break the waves. The main street of Kusfeld becomes a canal ground. With its parking spots for boats, it creates a floating market, quintessential element of small, almost fully self-sufficient settlement. It is a place of exchange with other similar settlements of the peninsula, or those in the wider context of the Baltic Sea. Square around the church becomes the main meeting space for gatherings, a local forum where the communal decision-making is happening. The cemetery serves as the public park and reflective space. Overproduction of food, but also the stockpile for harsh seasons and emergency case, is stored on the highest hill of Kusfeld, in a few meter deep bunker-like vault. The island becomes a public beach, but also a place for refuge. Altogether, the ensemble provides a variety of public, communal, and semi-private spaces, a redefinition of architecture for the upcoming circumstances, settlement affected by rising sea level, climate changes, and new socio-economical models. Climate changes are an exponential process. Bigger the changes, faster the consequences. Following the idea of a timeline, the graduation project is treated as a tale of expanded undertaking. Noah's Ark 2.0 is a toolbox of solutions for disaster prevention that the local inhabitants can form in their environment. The first garden in the sea sets the mold for a possibility of living in Kusfeld even when the sea level rises. But it could start already now with a Bottom of the Sea festival. With the topic of sustainability having its momentum, a cultural event, exhibitions and workshops organized around such infrastructure would allow to profoundly understand the context. It would make both local inhabitants and visitors aware about the future of flood-risk shore areas and generate mental preparedness for possible relocation.
The proposed intervention, a spatial testimony, enlarges the domain of urban and architectural scale. It aspires to trigger emotions and to cause one to react emotionally, physically, and intellectually. It is not so much about the meaning of the form, rather the experiences it generates and uncertainties it embraces. Because of the changing nature of the site, it also aims at the discussion about temporality. It underlines the importance of everyday, the beauty of ordinary. Why is the story of a small settlement like Kusfeld such a meaningful one? Because in this less and less comprehensible world, there are unheard voices of things, small stories of people, animals, species, plants, and whole communities that can be so inspiring. And the best way to provoke social change is to listen.